welcome to the Data Science Hangout. Hope everybody's having a great week. I'm Rachel. I lead our pro community at Posit. I am based in Boston and I have some bad allergies right now. So if I sound different, that's why. But the Data Science Hangout is our open space to chat about data science leadership, questions you're facing, and getting to hear about what's going on in the world of data across all different industries. And it happens every Thursday at 12 Eastern time, same time, same place. So if you're watching this recording on YouTube later, the link to join us live next time will be in the details below. At the Hangouts, we are dedicated to making this a welcoming space for everybody. So we love to hear from you, no matter your level of experience or area of work or industry. It's also totally okay to just listen in if you want. You can also join in the conversation, jump in and ask questions by raising your hand on Zoom. You could also put questions in the Zoom chat, and always feel free to put a star next to it if you want me to read that question instead of calling on you to jump in the conversation. And then third, we also have a Slido link where you can ask questions anonymously. And thank you, Hannah. I see you just shared that there. But with all of that, thank you again for joining us today. I am so excited to be joined by Natalia Andriychuk, a Statistical Data Scientist in the R Center of Excellence at Pfizer. And Natalia is a longtime Data Science Hangout attendee too, so excited to have you here. We'd love to have you kick us off with just introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your role, and also something you like to do outside of work too.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. And thank you for having me. You know, it's very interesting when you join Hangouts as the guest, and then you as the person who's just like, you know, coming as a guest, and then you come to listen to other people speak. It's just kind of a change of roles, and it's very exciting to me to be here today. So yeah, I'm Natalia Andriychuk. I'm a statistical data scientist at our Center of Excellence in Pfizer. I joined Pfizer a year ago. Previously to that, I worked in CRO for like 7 years. It's a contract research organization, and I was in a variety of roles. And this was the company where I actually transitioned from more like a project management type of role to application programmer, and then became a part of the data science team there. And now that I joined Pfizer, a part of the SWAT team. So there's our Center of Excellence that has our core team and our SWAT team. So the SWAT team stands for, I really like the acronym, it's Statistical Workflows and Analytic Tools. And we primarily use R for everything we do, and we're developing training, we're providing support for business lines on various projects, and projects can vary in scope. And support we provide, the only common denominator is like they all written in R, and significant part of our job is to provide technical expertise and also promote best practices for the projects that people are already developing, and also community building is a big part as well. And outside of my work, last year I discovered paddleboarding, and I really loved it. And I live in North Carolina, so it's pretty hot in here now. So I think we can already start a season for paddleboarding this year. So I'm excited to do that with my friends.
Nice. I was just putting that on my list for things to do in Boston this summer too, paddleboarding in the Charles.
Yeah.
Well, so excited to have you here with us today. And as we wait for questions to come in from everybody, I thought it might be helpful to learn a little bit more about the SWAT team at Pfizer and how many people are on that team and kind of how you came about creating it too.
Yeah, so I wasn't the one who came up with the idea. I came later as, you know, onboarded as a SWAT team member, and Mike here on the call, you can see him, Smith MK name. So if I say something wrong, please, Mike, feel free to jump in and correct me. So basically, before I joined Pfizer, there was an initiative to streamline the process of, bring together the R users, because when I joined Pfizer, I think it was shy to like 1,000 people on the Microsoft Teams channel in Pfizer who were either already knew R or learning R and create projects in R and try to learn themselves or find colleagues to learn together. And there were a lot of projects which were going on in R, and the idea was to develop the team to help to bring all those people together, to streamline the training part of it, and also provide support to business lines. So how to approach certain projects and answer certain questions. Also, one piece of it is, I heard Mike was saying on the call the other time that they were guardians of like production R tools. So we have the professional suite of tools at Pfizer, Posit Suite, Workbench, and Package Manager, and then you can also use the local version of R, and people were a little bit confused about that, and we're still providing that support. And so streamlining the learning aspect of it as well.
Hey, and somebody had just asked, I think maybe this was in the chat. Andy, do you want to jump in?
Oh yeah, my question was just if you also have Python users, is there like an R and a Python SWAT, or is everyone R there at Pfizer?
Yeah, so we do have some pockets of organization that use Python. I don't know the exact numbers. My impression from what I've seen is maybe they're less users or they're less engaged in building their own community. But the user channel that we have is like R and Pfizer user channels dedicated for. We also provide a lot of documentation. We have like a Confluence part as well. It's mostly dedicated to our users. But anyone with Python experience can join and help us out.
I've been really impressed to see all the different aspects of community across the SWAT team as well, and like all these different events and how you connect with people across the company. And I know that's something that I guess happens for a lot of big companies. They may have like pockets of users in different areas, but it's hard to really get everybody together and start sharing that knowledge across the team. And I'd love to just hear your feedback on how you've been able to do that, or some things that have been helpful for you in getting people together.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And so we have the SWAT team is like 100% dedicated consultancy group. And then we have the R core team, and people in that team, they can be pharmacometricians, stat programmers, biostatisticians, but they also help with this initiative as well. And then within the core team, we have multiple initiatives, which is like internal outreach, external outreach, advances in R, communication, education. So we have all those different streams that are targeting different levels of engagement within R. So for example, within, let's say internal outreach. So within internal outreach, we have the hangout sessions, very similar to what we're doing right now, but within Pfizer. And then we have the book club. And then we have the community of practice events. It's every event that happens every month, where people can come and colleagues can come and present their various projects. And it also varies in the expertise level. Certain presentations kind of very suitable for beginners level, and then others are more complex and advanced. So targeting this approaching R and learning, bringing people together from all the different perspectives kind of helps, because even if colleagues can come to Hangouts this week, maybe they can attend community of practice. And at the community of practice, they would hear about Hangouts and who's the guest next time. Maybe they will have time to do that next time. And then the book club is also the initiative that is very, I think we have around 140 people now all around the world, like in Philippines and Japan and US and Mexico. So this was a big initiative as well. And then we have the external outreach, where we track people who are part of different external working groups, and we're trying to identify the gaps in the representation. So it's, if I try to answer your question kind of like in short, it's targeting from kind of different sources and different angles, the community aspect of it.
Thank you. It's so cool to hear that you have the internal data science hangouts as well. I believe you are the first company to ever do that I know of. But it was giving me some ideas that maybe I should put some documentation together for like how to host your own internal data science hangout too.
Yeah, and I really want to like acknowledge your help with it, because what happened is we reached out to you asking if you could, share your expertise, your knowledge, your experience, because coming to the Hangout and it's totally different piece from facilitating it. And I know it's probably so much going on in the background to actually putting this whole thing together. So you're very responsive. When I actually reached out and we set up the meeting and I asked a few questions, having the Hangout, I think, within the organization is very valuable because of the added aspect of actually talking about certain things within the organization. So for example, if I come to this Hangout and we discuss certain questions, I get certain questions, we discuss certain topics. Sometimes I might say, well, this is a great question, but I can't talk about it because the information is proprietary, like I can't really share it, which if you do the Hangout within your organization, you don't have to worry about that. Like all people work kind of on the same project or on different projects, but you can share the information together. And this is how certain problems get solved faster, or issues people are running into. And then it also brings people together that wouldn't work together necessarily. I think this is very valuable part of it.
Such a great point too, like bring people together that wouldn't have naturally been working on projects. Okay, so I see a ton of questions coming in here, and Song Yu, I see you had asked a question in the chat about submissions. Do you want to jump in? And I can read. Oh, I see you've unmuted. But the question was just, does Pfizer plan to use R for submissions?
Yeah, this is, I guess, the question that every company, every pharma company is asking themselves. So I'll start, I kind of take a step back. I know there are a lot of great initiatives happening in the pharma space, and specifically within the R submission working group within our consortium. And I think, we have Eric here from that group, Eric Nance. And then my co-worker, Sam, he's also part of one of the pilots or a couple of the pilots. And we're certainly, as a company, probably are thinking about it. I don't have a good answer for you, but I think if I'm talking about my opinion, is that this is where industry is probably moving towards. And this is definitely something that companies going to pilot. And I think the idea that the companies are actually coming together and working together, open source within working groups, kind of talks a lot about where the industry is moving, and that everybody are interested in it. And eventually this might come to this point.
Thank you. I'm going to jump over to one of the Slido questions, and let's see, one one question on Slido was, do these groups include bioconductor uses, genomic types, or is the clinical group a separate server group or oversight?
Was
I
this
think
about the working group or what kind of group?
I think it's about like the SWAT team and the Center of Excellence, if this is also including like genomic type use cases and people who use bioconductor as well.
Well, if we're talking about, and I'm hoping I'm understanding the question correctly, if we're talking about the projects that we consult on, there's variety of projects that people work on in different pockets of organization, and sometimes we're just solving the technical questions and stuff. And then if we're talking about the SWAT team, necessarily we're 100% our programmers that were hired to help with those technical questions. And I hope we'll have different backgrounds, but I hope I understand the question. Hope that helped.
Yeah, and for any anonymous questions, if anybody wants to add more context, feel free to put that into Slido too. But Libby, I see you had a great question in the Zoom chat. Do you want to jump in here?
Sure. And I'm really interested in Alan's question as well. Hopefully that can be a good follow-on. I was wondering if leadership has been supportive. It sounds like they have been, or if there's been any encouragement for people, our users, not necessarily the SWAT team people, to spend a portion of their time doing these community events, like time that's kind of taken away from them doing their heads down work. I know that having leadership support to say, hey, spend 10% of your time or 20% of your time doing that stuff that's important is always helpful. So I was wondering how you guys had approached talking with leadership and getting kind of buy-in from them.
Yeah, that's a very good question. And I think it's kind of an anticipated question as well. So I consider myself a lucky one because all the heavy lifting about talking to leadership is done for me by my managers. But I can say that from where I sit, I see the leadership support because even in the last semester, there were certain goals set towards having our training, and certain parts of the organization were encouraged to start programming. We're encouraged to take the R training, and we developed the so-called mini projects, and hopefully we can open those to the world one day. It's basically little projects that show you how to work with the data, create plots, manipulate data, wrangle, all that sorts of things, create functions. And then we encourage all the programmers start working on the mini projects. So I think that shows that the leadership is interested in investing people, colleagues, learning R and using them within their job, day-to-day work.
I think Alan's question is a good follow-up here too. So Alan, you want to jump in?
Yeah, Libby and I were thinking along similar lines. I think the questions really, really relate, and maybe Natalia, you've already really spoken to this. I was really curious about how people come into the role of doing this as something they're really dedicated to versus as like a side gig. And technical organizations, I think, have a really hard time figuring out how to value that kind of work versus productivity measured in code and output and other kinds of things. And so I'm just curious, like, how many people are really dedicated to maintaining this really big community as a focus versus as a thing that they dabble in. And if there's anything that you can share about how you figure out how to measure the success of that for them.
Yeah, that's a loaded question, actually. And I think it's a great continuation of Libby's question too. And in terms of, I just wanted to add, I think the idea that we have a SWAT team, a dedicated team that was hired, also shows leadership support, because we do have those FTEs. And in terms of how many people are in our team right now, So the SWAT team is 6 people. Yep, 6 people for right now. And we're, this is the core team, and they're definitely. Sorry, I'm trying to think so that I don't say anything I'm not supposed to say, and like how much I can share. So for starters, for the projects that are starting for bringing community together, I think this is the perfect size. The way the organization gonna build up on it, it's kind of under the discussion. How to show the return. So basically, regarding the showing the return on investment, we are setting up certain goals every semester that we are moving towards, and then we are trying to show the leadership that it's worth it. And yeah, it's kind of like a loaded question for me right now. Maybe I'll get back to that. Sorry, it's like a lot of things to process.
No, totally understand. Really appreciate it. Thanks.
Sure.
I felt the same way, Natalia, when Mike was asking me questions when we had our like no featured leader session. And then after I was like, oh, I wish I said that to Mike.
Yeah. And just to, sorry, Rachel, I was thinking maybe it would be easier to me to talk about the example, because I really want to come back to this like return on investment question and stuff, and how do we measure the success. So one of the examples could be one project we did last year, I think. We developed like the Shiny framework. It's basically a process where the project team can specify and refine content within the interactive environment of like maybe Shiny application, and then capture certain settings and output and in the production environment. And then this was the framework. And right now, after we published it last year, certain teams kind of picked it up and went with it and implemented within their projects. And now it helped not one, not two, but maybe more teams to actually facilitate their projects and make the workflow more reproducible. So this is how I guess it works in this setting right now, where we can set up certain tools, or maybe moving forward, develop the packages that then can go within the organization, within Pfizer, and project teams can pick it up and actually use it within their production environments.
Thank you. And Travis, I see you had a question in the chat too. Do you want to jump in next?
Sure. Understood that you all are thinking about submissions, as many are, because no one wants to be the first to face the wrath of grumpy FDA reviewers expecting SaaS. With that many active users involved in your community, what are there other projects or initiatives that you're all using R for that you're finding useful? I know for us, we found using R Markdown and things like that for monitoring kind of safety reporting and even metrics for like trial, BI type applications. Are you all doing things like that with R, or are there other active areas that are not, like making SCTM and ADAM data sets for FDA that's ongoing?
Yeah, so I know about a couple initiatives. So we have one of the teams within the organization, they're actually leading the Admiral vaccine extension package. This is part of the Pharmaverse initiative. And then I'm not necessarily involved into the study teams, so there might be like a harder question for me to answer, and this is something that I can remember off the top of my head. So this is the one that comes to mind. Mike isn't here, so maybe if maybe he has something he could think about, but I don't want to put him on the spot as well if we're talking about the actual study teams.
That's okay, that's why I'm here. So yes is the short answer, Travis. That there's pockets throughout the organization using R. So global supply is one, pharmaceutical sciences, and not just the kind of GXP stuff. So good lab, good manufacturing practice, good clinical practice, but all kinds of dashboards are being built for all kinds of uses. R has been used for quite a long time in the clinical pharmacology and pharmacometric space for predicting PK concentrations and PK profiles for drugs and different dosage administrations. Those tend to be used kind of internally. So for internal teams to address questions of what do we do next, or for reviewing data as it comes in. But those are not the things that we submit to regulators, at this point. But yeah, there's at the R and Pharma conference 2 years ago, I did a quick look-see, and there was over 1,500 people had downloaded R. So that's across the whole organization, and I can't tell you what they're using it for. But
Isn't it great to have your manager back up on the call like this?
So I see there was a Slido question where I'm going to need some help with acronyms sometimes here, but the question was, have you shared our programs for reconciliation of reports delivered by vendors, which could be used for CROs to check EDC data with data provided by external labs? And I'm going to copy this question into the chat. That's a little wordy too. Here we go.
That's quite a complex question.
Yeah, okay. I'm not aware of any, but I'm sure there is. Shared programs of reports.
And we could come back to that
with,
one too.
Shared with whom as well? Have you shared our programs? Yeah, there is. I know R is used within the specimen tracking reconciliation. I'm sure it's probably used within checking the EDC data.
What is EDC data now?
It's electronic data capturing
Okay.
system data.
Cool.
I think, yeah.
Going back to the book club that you talked about, it's amazing to hear how many people are in the book club all over the world too. And Caitlin, I see you had a question about it.
Yeah, I did. I was just kind of curious what type of books are on the book club list, or what's currently on the list right now.
Yeah, so we just started in terms of, this is our kind of first book club, and it's R for Data Science second edition book club. We starting from the very beginning, from the basis, and we thought that maybe this book actually can bring more people together, because it's also a new edition and they added a lot of stuff, and it's very helpful no matter what level you are once you start reading it. And I always come back to that book. And then I think if the book club going to be successful, which it's we need to come up with the metrics to measure the success as well, because as Rachel mentioned, it's like all around the world, and it's kind of hard to keep up with the feedback as well and gather the correct feedback, I would say. Then I would move to maybe either Mastering Shiny or Advanced R books. However, Advanced R I think might be a little bit too much for the next one. Maybe Mastering Shiny would be a good one.
Yeah, the R for Data Science is a classic. I love that one for sure.
Yeah. And the book club, this is the first book club initiative that I'm leading, and we have a very good feedback from certain colleagues. And the idea that we had is that we didn't want to add additional overheads to people who join book club. So we have multiple groups. Since we have 140 or whatever people, about 8 people in each group, we had to have group leads for each group. And And then we didn't want to add like extra complexity or extra preparation time for those group leads. So some of the group leads, they're very, very new to R, but the idea of them just like going there, facilitating the discussion, learning, asking questions was enough for them to become a group lead, because they would have the support from maybe other members of their group that are more proficient in R. And we have those cases as well.
I think that's a really interesting dynamic to have, the newbies that are being the group leads. So I think that's a really interesting take.
Yeah, thank you. I love seeing the conversation happening in the chat as well. And I saw somebody had asked like how many government agencies are now using Python or R, and it's cool to see everybody answering in the chat there too. But one of the questions on Slido for you, Natalia, is do you find newer or younger employees more likely to interface with you and the SWAT team? And is there some resistance from older SAS programmers, or is that not much of an issue?
So we definitely have the newer employees reaching out to us. We have summer intern programs, and when we're onboarding interns, our setup is kind of stat programming and programming interns. Our setup is part of the kind of quote unquote curriculum type of deal, and we're showing them where those mini projects live, and they go through mini projects. So I think that's definitely something that new R users do when they join the company, or people who want to learn R or is fresh out of college. In terms of resistance, nobody really showed me any resistance. But if we're talking seriously, I'm sure there are situations where people build their careers using SAS for many, many years, and they build great technical expertise, and they mostly work in SAS, and maybe they need to know why we need to start using R in certain projects, or maybe they don't want to be part of those projects, or they want to be like in their SAS world. But I think it's important for us to communicate and create this community of users, why R is important and where the industry is moving. But we don't tell people to like stop using SAS and start using R. This is not what's going on. We just provide the tools for them to start using R if they're ready for it, and that they have this community where they can ask questions and get support.
Thank you. Eric, I see you have a community focused question in the chat too, if you want to jump in here.
Yeah, excellent. Great to have you, Natalia. It's great to virtually speak with you again, and certainly thank you for attending my workshop last year. That was a great fun. But anyway, as you many know, I'm also passionate about building community internally where I work, and part of it is making sure that not only knowing what is capable of what R can do in the clinical space and innovative projects, but trying to have a diverse set of topics that people can learn from, and hence having speakers be comfortable sharing their work, whereas avoiding like the same set of voices every time talking about the similar things. So what are efforts that your SWAT team is doing to help bring in other people that maybe weren't as comfortable about sharing their work and getting them comfortable to share and learn from others?
Yeah, so basically the question is, how do we like diversify the people who come in and speak about what they do? Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think some of the initiatives I mentioned, they kind of help with it. So within Hangouts, I can ask my coworkers, since I'm pretty new to the organization, and this is a huge organization, so I can go to my managers or coworkers who have been with the company for a longer time and ask them about the names. Who do you think should come to the next Hangout? What experiences we want to share? Because we might have people from stat programming coming, people from digital coming, and they all have very different experiences, but they all use R. So the experience of using R within digital would be totally different from, stat programming world. And this helps to also diversify the audience, because certain people would join the Hangout to support their coworker, which happening to me right now. And thanks for all of you for joining, who are my coworkers. And so this helps. And then the community of practice meetings that we hold every month, they also they're also helpful. I think at some point when we started establishing these events, we were kind of asking certain people, knowing that these colleagues who would be eager to share, that they're in front lines of our community building. And then after that, when this initiative has started, it brought more people who actually expressed interest into sharing, or certain presentations inspired them to actually go back to their team and say, hey, we need to share something, or we're doing this great thing, we need to share with the world. So the community of practice, when they present, we have 2 20-minute presentation talks, and we try to diversify more like beginner level and more expert level, or more advanced level talks. And it also talks can also be not only technical, but around best practices, like mishaps, stuff like this, because it's all internal. You can share a lot of stuff internally.
Yeah, that's that nugget right there. I just want to emphasize again, it's not just the speakers themselves, but it's the range of topics too. One of the biggest hurdles I've had is people thinking that, oh, I have to have this perfect to talk about it. No. Sometimes my biggest mishaps end up leading to an innovative solution, but you don't get the full story just by looking at the end product, getting the process there, and being, I hate to say vulnerable, but being comfortable with sharing those stumbling blocks. I'm comfortable with it, but definitely want to help others feel comfortable with that too.
Yeah, this is actually a very important point, because it's, in my mind, it's kind of a GitHub mentality. So you're committing your work even if it's not perfect, and then you're pushing it when it's perfect. So it's the same. You don't have to wait till the last moment to maybe present maybe an external presentation, but definitely not internally. And we had the presentations where people were presenting the work that maybe wasn't 100% finished, and they were asking for the feedback. And this led to further collaboration with other folks from maybe other pockets, or the SWAT team, pockets of organization, or SWAT team.
Mike, I see you have your hand raised here too.
Yeah, I just want to kind of chime in there to say that, we've had a huge broad range, as Natalia is saying, and the presentations I love are from people that say things like, I just discovered R in the last year and it's awesome, and this is the things that I find really nice to use, because that's kind of opening the door and saying, look, I'm not an expert, but here's what I've found, which is fantastic. But the other great thing is to showcase the variety of uses of R throughout the organization. We had a hangout session with someone from the IT security world, our user for years and years and years, and yet still kind of curious about new things like Quarto and dashboards, and but he's dealing with things like, what was it, his API using R had been hit millions of times per day, and it's like, whoa, that's not, that's next level compared to clinical trial reporting, right?
Yeah, and we have certain people who kind of met. So for example, I'm leading one of the groups in the book club, and I have pretty experienced programmers in my team as well. And we're just, by reading the chapter, something comes up like data formats, or how to deal with a lot, like big amount of data and stuff, and we just start sharing the packages, the workflows, and even certain people who have been working with R for a while, they might not use certain tools that people who maybe attended certain sessions, heard about certain tools, then the sharing process becomes inevitable and leads to greater collaboration as well.
I was just actually talking about that internally too with Rich, who created the GT package, and he was starting to think about like how he could use pins and hadn't thought too much about pins. So I was sharing some resources that I had seen and that we shared in the Hangout. And so it was cool just to see like how you can speed up that process for somebody by helping share resources with them. Javier, I see you have your hand raised here.
Thanks, Rachel. I'll lower my hand here. Natalia, great talk so far. This has been excellent. And I appreciate Mike chiming in also here and there. We just recently started at our company these coffee chat series where we're paired with an individual in another group, like really not related at all. And I was recently sitting on a call with a leader, and just in introducing ourselves, we started talking about R, and he told me very seriously, oh yeah, no, that's interesting. We don't use R in our organization because it's really a statistical language, and that's all it can do, versus Python that can do X, Y, and Z. And like, I was sort of taken aback, like, oh my God, how have you not heard about all these resources we have at the company for, not just the Posit professional products, but also like what R can do in 2023. And it dawned on me that like, I still struggle with finding these pockets of individuals or organizations in other parts of the company to educate them on like modern R usage. So it's kind of an open-ended question, but do you have any tips on like how to sort of spread the word to these types of people? Do you have maybe a landing page or something, or a Quarto page that your team has kind of opened up for the entire company, or a Confluence page? I struggle with how to get the word out in that way.
Yeah, we have, and this is a very good question. Because I'm asking myself that a lot, maybe once a month. So we have a lot of resources. We do have a Confluence page, again, the Teams channel. We do have the associated like Microsoft Teams website that associated with it, where you can come, and there are tons of links that are cross-linked between the Confluence and this website, and then the Teams. For certain announcements, we're tagging the whole Teams channel so that people receive the notification. There are multiple channels within the whole channel. There are multiple like streams, questions and answers, general, R and pharma. So a lot of resources there. One thing that I think is a little bit hard is that sometimes you can work hard on actually creating those resources. And this is what we're doing. We created so much documentation since last year on various different topics. So the rule of thumb, if somebody's coming to us with a question and we answer this question, we write a Confluence article about it, especially if it may be helpful for other colleagues within the organization. But I think the hard part is also marketing. Because the resources can be all there available at any time, no passwords required, but people just kind of maybe choose to ignore it, not because they want to, it's because there's so many other things happening. They're working on the projects, the deadlines are approaching. I even had one colleague who asked me how to opt out of notifications. He's like, you're sending too many. How can I opt out? And it's kind of a situation where then the same person can later come and ask why he or she didn't see the announcement about the meeting that they were interested in. So I think there is a very thin balance of where you should notify people about upcoming events, but maybe don't overdo it, because then it becomes a white noise and they just start ignoring all the notification and everything. what we chose to do is that during some of the events, like for example, in the community of practice events, we would make an announcement about Hangouts, and Hangouts, we can make an announcement about book club or community of practice. So we're kind of cross-linking all the events and making announcements here and there, because person can join one meeting but then skip another one, but constantly reminding people about certain things that are going on are very helpful. And then we also discovered that maybe having easy access to certain resources. For example, if you have a Teams channel, make sure you pin certain messages or certain links in Teams so that it takes people one click, not two, but one click to get to the resources they need. And eventually, I think with a lot of training, this will become a pattern, and people will start sharing the knowledge with other colleagues, and they will start sharing those links with each other.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. I am getting slightly distracted by this amazing chat that's happening at the same time as well, and all this conversation. I'll send it to you too, so that you can see it. Mike, I see your hands raised.
Yeah, sorry, I was just going to add on to that after the user community meetings, we kind of save the slide decks, and that becomes a showcase for what R can do. So that's one way of kind of having that internal place for people to see what R can be used for. The nice thing, again, because that's internal, you can be as specific as you like, and you can talk about real kind of detail of the project you were working on, and where to find resources, where to even find the code to make things happen that maybe you can't share externally. The other nice part of it is sorry, there was the sharing in the community side, about kind of influencing it upwards to let people know what R can be used for. I think you need a handful of cases where you can demonstrate someone being superhumanly efficient, and that will get management's attention really quick. It's like, you went from data to final result in how long? That will garner attention like nobody's business. So, that's where things like Markdown and Shiny and things like that are gateway drugs for R, because managers will just look at that and go, that's amazing. How do you even think about doing that?
I've been trying to frame our customer stories in that way too, or like conference talks I see, to try and put it into like 2 or 3 sentences. And one that's coming to mind right now is Tiger Tang, who was on here, and he said how he saved 12,000 hours with R, and just like putting that number out there front and center to get people's attention. But I love all this conversation here. I feel like we could go for 2 hours on all of this. Stephanie, I see you had a great question in the chat quite a bit earlier here. I just wanted to pull you in here if you're still on.
Hello. Hi, Natalia. This talk has already been so interesting.
Oh.
Thank you for, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Thanks for joining today.
Am I delayed on my internet, or is it on this side? Oh.
I think you might be a little bit delayed, but not too much.
Okay, good.
Or maybe not at all.
Well, I asked my question back when you were talking about your book club, thinking about people working their way through R for data science, and they get really excited about using R. They use MT cars to make a ggplot and think this is great, but then they get back to their desks to do their day-to-day job, and sometimes people have a hard time actually putting it all together to, say, make a TLF for their regular everyday work. So I was wondering if you had any thoughts about this and how you're kind of trying to bridge that gap with your team.
This is a great question. Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, and this is one of the questions we also asked ourselves. And I think this is where those mini projects came in, because the mini projects actually focused on the data like SDTM or Atom data that we're using. I don't quite remember, but this is exactly what we're doing there. So basically those concepts of plotting data, wrangling data, creating functions, applied to something that they would do in their regular job, creating different listings and tables and specific plots that they would create. But I guess there's also this component of bridging the gap where you attended the book club and maybe you haven't heard about the mini project. So there's a lot of like advertising going on in that space as well. And then since book club is joined by so many different people from different parts of organizations, they may even do different things. Like we have one person in my book club who is part of the real world data team, and then the other person who's a part of statistical programming team. So they pretty much face different challenges as well. But I think they're also supported by, some of them also supported by their own teams and given tasks within their own teams as well.
Thank you. And Nicholas, I see you had a question as well on some of the collaborative efforts in pharma.
Sure, yeah. I was just interested if you had any thoughts on, yeah, collaborative efforts, if they're actually helpful, what you might think about something like the Pharmaverse, and also, you know, are there any discussions as to like Pfizer potentially joining?
Yeah, thank you, Nick, for this question. And I also want to let people know I know Nick from our TPR user group that we're creating together. We had our first meeting this week. We didn't, like, the attendance was a little bit lower than I would have wanted, but it's also was just the first meeting. So if you're in the RTP, North Carolina Triangle Research Park area, go to your meetup page and search for our user group and join us next time. Yeah, so Pharmaverse. We are actually, as a SWAT team, we started looking at the Pharmaverse packages to see what each of them is doing and where we can help and contribute. This is an ongoing discussion, and some of us, and I know that, well, when I'm thinking about Pharmaverse, I know it's kind of like a subset of packages, and when I'm thinking about all packages that do clinical research or connected to clinical research, is way bigger than, I guess, Pharmaverse. But we do have some people contributing to the packages. So one of them, I want to mention Sam Parmar. I think he's on a call. So he already started contributing to one of the Pharmaverse packages, LogRx, and I think he's doing some good progress there. And I think Nick was also involved in that package as well. So package that I already mentioned, the Admiral Vaccine Extension package, we're contributing to that one. And I know there's so many great packages that we potentially can contribute to, but we first need to kind of assess what we're dealing with and then create a plan on how to move forward, because there are a lot of open source packages. We also looked into Teal. I don't think it's a part of the Pharmaverse package, but it was used in the our submissions working group. So yeah, there's a lot of packages to look at and figure out the plan on how to implement them internally and if there is a need.
Cool. Thank you.
I'm seeing a lot of love for this meetup group too. And we shared the link in the chat if other people want to join that or know people in the area too.
Yay, that would be great.
Congrats on getting that started too.
Thanks.
I see there's a Slido question on where does your team get funding, and is there a reporting line in the organization? Are you part of clinical R&D?
Yes, we're part of so the reason I think our group gets funded from like different places. So Sam and I sit in one part of the organization, and Mike is actually in UK. He's in another part of organization. And then we have two members in our team who are part of Pfizer India, and they're supporting that team as well. So I think this is what's unique about our team. It's not like we're team sitting under one part of organization, but we're just kind of spread out a little bit.
Okay, this is really hard to go through the questions we didn't get to yet in 4 minutes. So I'm gonna try and go through and see what I maybe have missed. But if there was something that's really pressing for anybody, feel free to just raise your hand here on Zoom too. Okay. One of the other anonymous questions was, are there members of your organization's QA team who participate with the SWAT group?
Yes, so going back to this one example I gave about the Shiny framework, we actually were working with the QA people to make sure it aligns with the standards we have for quality assurance. So yeah, keep in touch with them.
Okay, a question I wanted to ask you, because I'm scrolling to find the other questions and I'm not sure what I missed, but something I wanted to ask you is, if somebody in the group today was thinking about starting their own internal data science hangout, like what's something that you've learned from that process?
Yeah, so that's a good question. It was a little bit overwhelming to think about it and how to start it. But then one thing you would need is the list of people who, at least like 10 or 15 from the start. And then you would, what I would do, I just like give my example. I would identify the person. First, I created the calendar of events I would think would make sense. We do hangouts every other weeks. So I specifically put the dates I would invite people to, and then I will send them the invitation asking to be a part of Hangout. I actually started Hangouts with Mike, and Douglas Robinson. He's also part of our core team who are moving initiative forward. So I thought it's a great start to start from the people who are actually like interested in also doing the Hangouts. It will be first easy to Hangouts, especially maybe if you know colleagues or you work with certain colleagues that you already have a rapport established with. So do that and then invite people. And then I set up the Microsoft form that I would send out asking about, regular information, occupation, bio, maybe certain questions they want me to ask, and then they would fill out the form. And I also ask them to provide their headshot. I think it makes the Hangout invitation a little bit more colorful. And then what I still do now is that I schedule a 30-minute call with each guest, like the week prior or something, to go over any questions that person might have if they never attended the Hangout, or something that can come up. And then it actually helps me to know more about what they're doing, especially if this is the first time I'm actually having one-on-one with this colleague, because sometimes I don't, I'm pretty new to company as well. So we would chat a little bit about their interests, what interests them in R and stuff. And then, then we have the Hangout session. And then I'll try to have at least 3 people booked in advance.
That's awesome. I love the point about kind of meeting as a smaller group first, so that when you got to the first Hangout, that you also had some people there to kind of help you with the conversation and then get people talking too. Well, thank you so much, Natalia, for joining us today. And it's been a pleasure learning about how you're running these Hangouts internally. And it's given me a lot of ideas of things we could share to help others do that. So thank you again for joining. If people do want to get in touch with you, is the best way LinkedIn or what do you prefer?
Yeah, I think LinkedIn, Twitter will both work.
Awesome. Well, thank you all so much. Have a great rest of the day and hope to see you back next Thursday.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me and for all the questions.